Hey everyone, welcome back to Real History, where we examine history versus Hollywood. My name is History Professor Jared Frederick, and before we get started, if you haven't already, I invite you to hit that subscribe button below and leave your comment on our latest content. As many of you are well aware, the much anticipated trailer for Ridley Scott's Gladiator II just dropped, and this is perhaps a moment of cinematic redemption for Ridley Scott after his previous dud, which came out last year, and that was Napoleon, which was much anticipated. And perhaps a little bit of worry can be rooted in the fact that this movie has the same screenwriter. So hopefully it will be a little bit more cohesive, although I do not expect it to be more historically accurate either, going by its predecessor. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at the first trailer for Gladiator II.
I remember that day. I never forgot it. That a slave could
Reflection
take
of its origins.
an emperor.
Where were you born?
I don't know. I never knew a mother nor a father.
You will be my instrument.
Who are you?
There's just his backstory.
Did you hear that crowd? The greatest temple Rome ever built. The Coliseum. Because this is what they believe in. Power.
Blood in the water, Saving Private Ryan style.
There are victories yet still to come.
Rome has so many subjects, she must feed them.
They can eat war.
The arena turns slaves into gladiators, then gladiators into free men.
You have something in you. I knew it from the start.
Did you now?
Rage. That rage is your gift.
This is about survival!
Nice.
Survive! Hold together and when the charges break for the wall.
Whose head could I give you that would satisfy this fury?
The entire Roman armies.
Too much?
The general will do.
Rome must fall.
Another classic story of revenge.
We make it out alive. Alright, alright. Hands on the mausoleum floor. Blood stains the Coliseum doors.
This ring belonged to Maximus. Now I give it to you. What is the dream of Rome? If our people are not free.
Interesting soundtrack selection.
I was owned. Now I will control an empire.
I will not waste another generation of young men for their vanity.
Strength among us! This how Rome treats its heroes!
Hands on the mausoleum floor. Blood stains the Coliseum doors. The gods have spoken!
Whew. Oh, that was quite the visual treat there. I think it's naturally fitting that we have Russell Crowe make a slight cameo appearance here with some archival footage from the original film. And there's all this speculation of whether he is going to make some sort of spiritual cameo in the movie. And I think that's entirely in the realm of possibility, because in ancient Rome, there was this belief that departed humans were transformed into these powerful spiritual beings, and these were deified dead who were commonly referred to as manes, who offered some sort of protective veil or protective security to the living. And perhaps we will see Maximus emerge here in that form in the movie. So Denzel Washington's character is listed as Macrinus, and this was a real-life power player who was born in what is now Algeria around 165 AD. And we often forget how large and diverse the Roman Empire was, and so I think that's something interesting to keep in mind. But in any case, I'm really excited to see Denzel Washington play a villain yet again, because his real-life character was most definitely a bloodthirsty one. I think this is a really cool visual because sometimes there were reenactments in the Coliseum that created previous naval battles from history, and so this is undoubtedly a nod to that, even if many of those reenactments weren't legitimate combat as we see depicted here. These big events in the Coliseum would usually begin in the morning with a beast hunt or a mass execution where animals would just tear into all of these victims, and all these violent spectacles would then be paused for dancing, for more lighthearted entertainment. They would serve lunch, and then that would be followed by the main events, which were gladiatorial combat. And group battles like that were usually fought by condemned criminals, such was the case with Maximus's fictional character in the original film. But a lot of those condemned were not true gladiators. Those battles were often conducted as almost like a warm-up band performance before the true talent arrived in the arena. Going from the cast listing, there are at least 2 emperors in this movie, and that is Geta and Caracalla. And these were brothers of the Severan dynasty. And they have a little bit of drama connected with their stories, and I suspect that the movie will dive into that. But suffice it to say, they didn't always get along, and I think Denzel Washington's character is going to be driving a wedge between them for his own personal gain. And so there's going to be a lot of politicking and manipulation happening behind the scenes in this movie, I suspect. FYI, General Cassius, played by Pedro Pascal, is not a real-life historical figure, though it does sound like his character has some ties to the also fictional General Maximus from the previous movie, so we shall see how these relationships play out. It's pretty cool here to see the enraged rhinoceros arriving on the scene. And this perhaps isn't too far a stretch, because there have been archaeological excavations done at the Coliseum that show a variety of exotic animals that were performed or slaughtered there. There were bears, lions, hyenas, wild boar, tigers, wolves, bulls, leopards, and everything else. However, some of the clothing, some of the armaments and armor that we see here might be a little bit of a stretch, especially the helmet of the person that we see on the rhinoceros. Those sorts of designs were more so visual embellishments created by subsequent generations of artists and performers as they envisioned gladiator fights. And they might be more so stereotypes from later time periods than matching reality here. It's great to see Connie Nielsen back as Lucilla. She was a great character in the original film, though the presence of her character in this movie is a bit problematic, historically speaking. As you may have learned from our previous recap of the 2000 film, which we invite you to watch right here on Real History, the real-life Lucilla had conspired against her brother Commodus, who was of course played by Joaquin Phoenix in the original, and attempted to have him assassinated in 182 AD. Commodus thereafter banished Lucilla on the island of Capri as punishment, and shortly ordered her execution thereafter. So in relation to this film's timeline, she would have been dead for over 2 decades by this point. And so she would not have been around during the time period shown in this latest rendition. Macrinus, Denzel's character, in the movie's promotional language is described as an arms dealer, but in reality he was a Praetorian prefect. In other words, he was a state administrator. This wasn't to say that he wasn't capable of cruelty. It's not to say that he didn't have a lust for power, because he most definitely did. And though some legends suggest that he himself was a gladiator at one point, I don't think he was as intimately involved in a lot of the gladiatorial games as we see depicted here in some of these scenes. But all that said, he has some very big aims for himself, and I think that viewers will find this quote, "Rome must fall," to be very revealing to the film's plot. Rather, just to clarify, I think he wants Rome's leadership to fall and not necessarily Rome itself. So the plot will thicken here. There we have it. The gods have spoken. I think this is going to be the new "Are you not entertained" line that we will associate with this movie. But I think it's safe to assume here that these new emperor characters that are emerging in this film are going to take the volume and the extremes as high as Joaquin Phoenix's Commodus did in the original. So there we have it, a breakdown of the first Gladiator II trailer. Do I think that this is going to be good history? Is this going to be a good history lesson? Absolutely not. However, I think the bigger question is, will it be as much of a cinematic feat and delight as the original one was a quarter of a century ago? I think that's really what people are going to be wanting from this. They want a good sword and sandals action thriller with a little bit of intrigue and a lot of visual spectacle. That's really what we want from these movies, and so my hopes aren't necessarily too high along historical lines, but we'll see if it can be good cinematically, even if there's no hope for it to be good historically. Some of my concluding thoughts are this, and I'll throw this into the broader category of Roman movies, and that is that a lot of Roman history films are a lot like our American Westerns. There are these archetypal characters, these sort of figurative heroes who are bucking the establishment in one form or another. And additionally, too, Rome is always used as a political and mythical allegory and serves as a cautionary tale about how even the most powerful empires and nations can fall. Certainly, the original film from 2000 offered a lot of food for thought in this regard. And something else to think about too, both the original and the sequel come out during a US presidential election year. And so I think, as is almost always the case, this movie is going to tell us as much about the present as it does the past. So there is our food for thought for this episode of Real History. We hope you enjoyed this little bit of commentary. Once again, if you haven't already, we invite you to hit the subscribe button below. And until we see you next time, stay curious.